Hello, my name is Maria McNamara and I'm the CEO of advance.org. Today I'm here with Adele Moynihan and Anthony Millett from Antler. Hello to both of you.
Hi,
Hi,
Maria.
Maria.
Thanks for having us.
Absolute pleasure. So let's begin with a description of what Antler actually is.
So Antler is a global VC firm, venture capital firm. We are quite unique in that the way that we find our companies to invest in is by working with the world's most exceptionally talented people, bringing them collectively together, helping them form really strong complementary co-founding teams, validating their ideas, giving them early access to capital, and giving them a global platform from which to build, some of the tremendous businesses that we think are going to be very impactful and meaningful over the next generation.
So there are many VC firms, both in the Australian market and the global market, that would claim to do the same thing. What makes Antler special?
So it's probably worth going back to kind of our genesis and why we exist in the first place, which is that if you look at venture capital historically, the capital that is supporting these ecosystems and supporting these exceptional entrepreneurs has not been equally distributed across the world. You've obviously seen huge pockets in Silicon Valley, Tel Aviv, Beijing, etc. But our view is that it takes really amazing people to build these really amazing businesses. And this amazing talent and these amazing people are much more widely and equally distributed around the world. And obviously here in Australia, we've got really phenomenal talent, and that's nothing new that I'm telling you there. And so what Antler is essentially doing is bringing the platform, the capital, the tools, the advisors, the clients, and global investors and clients and advisors to essentially bring a material unfair advantage to those entrepreneurs who want to build globally game-changing businesses.
And the kinds of entrepreneurs that you're looking for, so Advance looks after the Australian diaspora. So we have global Australians in all parts of the world, in financial services, in technology, in health. What kind of entrepreneurs are attracted to the Antler model?
So before I'll get Adele to talk about the kinds of people that are coming to build with Antler, but I think the fundamental thing that really differentiates us from a traditional VC model is where we start, in that we're attracting around the world 50,000 applications a year of incredibly talented individuals who want to come and build a business with Antler. And when these individuals come to us, they're coming to Antler to help form really strong co-founding teams. Okay. So they come in with one spike or one area of expertise, and we help them find those people that make them a complete team. They generally come in with 1 to 5 ideas that they come in to validate, and we work with them, and our advisors work with them to validate. But we also say to them, look, come and validate your idea, but if you see an idea better worth working on, be prepared to drop your idea and jump onto that. And so we end up forming really strong, unique co-founding teams around really strong opportunities where we give them, as I mentioned earlier, a clear path to capital and a global platform. Adele, maybe you want to talk about the types of people.
Sure. So broadly, they fall into 3 categories, the first of which is commercial. So if you think previous founders, management consultants, those can put the business model and the go-to-market strategy behind an idea. A third of which are technologists, so that's predominantly software engineers or hardware engineers in areas such as IoT. And third is subject matter experts. And this is often the people who bring the idea because they've got deep insight into particular areas such as insurance or payments or even technology such as AI and robotics. So we bring that mixture of individuals, and loosely put, if you have the person who has their idea from deep industry insight with the software developer to build it and the exited founder who knows how to start a company, scale it, and ultimately exit it, then we have like a really compelling team there.
So many of the Australians that return home, we're in the middle of a survey at the moment, which actually will be closing later this week. And the preliminary results suggest that a number of Australians who do return home after a stint overseas find it difficult to raise their profile, build a network, and more importantly, find a job, because the kind of work they were doing overseas isn't available here. So how would Antler appeal to people who are well ahead of the curve with that international experience?
I could perhaps answer this, Maria, in that that's a massive advantage that Antler gives to them. So around 80 individuals join each one of our cohorts, and those are highly vetted individuals. We put them through a rigorous interview process, usually 3 interviews and a submission task. So you know that you're walking into a group of people who are highly compelling individuals, and that's then like your alumni, like your community, where you have that shared experience and also other networks to leverage. So for those who are highly experienced but have lost their network over a number of years, they're able to regain it in a matter of weeks with Antler.
What we've also found, Maria, is that a lot of the people who come to build businesses with Antler have kind of cut their teeth in fast growth environments in Silicon Valley or in the US or in Europe or Asia. And as you mentioned, they come home, they don't necessarily have the access to capital or the networks or even know the people to which to go and form co-founding teams, or they feel that they've been on these high growth journeys, they've built up really unique experiences and come back to Australia and go, well, how is this going to be useful? And we've had some tremendous success with a lot of people that have either come back to Australia, Aussies returning, or people that have migrated to Australia, where we've been able to help these people that have got really unique and compelling experience of being in high growth environments together to ultimately found their own business while bringing that network, the capital, and that wider alumni and mentoring and advisor support. So we'll talk, I'm sure, about some of them later.
I was just about to say, I'd love to hear some of the stories, because I think if we talk about a couple of case studies, that would be really useful to those who are planning a return home or who have returned home and are considering various options.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll share a couple now. I think one thing just worth saying is we've probably, with the maturation of technology and the ability to build global technology businesses from everywhere or anywhere in the world, and the recent success, I guess, over the last 5 years, that we've been able to show that Australia is capable of creating, globally competitive, compelling, very sizable businesses. We think there's probably never been a better time to think about launching a new business. We'll just bring up now on the screen a couple of examples. One being Salient. We'll just bring it up in a second, but this is a team that formed in our first cohort. You've got Shivi here, who is was a research scientist at university, did a PhD in AI and computer vision, having worked for 4 years on Australia's first bionic eye. And he came into our program with, or our first cohort, with an invention of how he was able to do selective computer vision at the edge, so in camera devices. And ultimately his algorithms work in a way that our brain and our eyes work, not a mathematical computation, which means that they've got the world's fastest computer vision by a factor of 76 times. He met in our program Lars Olsen, who is a serial entrepreneur, triple exited entrepreneur, having sold his last business to Alipay, and then became their chief product officer in Indonesia. And Lars came into our program with kind of 10 to 15 ideas that he wanted to explore. Met Shivi, threw his own idea book out the window and said, this is the coolest piece of tech that I've ever seen. These guys have formed a really tremendous partnership. A little over a year ago, we've helped them raise $3.5 million into this business. We've helped them launch their US office, bring some of their clients to them, and they've now got about 12 staff, business now valued over $15 million, where these guys have the significant majority ownership. So it's a really tremendous story of where you've got Shivi, who's ultimately a migrant from a young age, Lars, who has recently moved to Australia, having had successful careers in the US and Asia, and we've been able to help them bring that network, that capital, and that global expansion to put them in a situation where if they hadn't met each other, Salient probably wouldn't exist. That's
a really compelling story. And more of that sort of, that's exactly what we're hoping would happen in the Australian ecosystem, the establishment and operation of organisations just like this. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And I think another example is Accomplish. And this is a great example. I'll just talk a little bit about what they're doing, and Adele can talk about the team and why we think this is so special. But interestingly, this is a business that started off in the recruitment space with these two founders, and then COVID hit. And the experience of the founders, the ability to pivot quickly and evolve, has meant that they've been able to evolve into a completely different business. They've raised $1 million from an international VC and been able to capitalize on the COVID opportunity. But I'll let Adele talk a little bit about the founders.
Yeah, I'd actually been speaking with David for about a year prior to joining Antler, and I've been trying to get him interested in the last couple of companies that I worked for, because he had been one of the first employees at Cabify, which is Spain's first ever unicorn. It's an Uber competitor there. He scaled their engineering function to 200 people, engineering and product function, and he had an Australian wife who was keen to come back. And I was speaking to him and trying to put to him opportunities that would enable him to see that kind of scale and impact within the local region. And it wasn't until joining Antler and I could explain to him how we could unlock that ability to find a network, to find a co-founder, to have the advisor network and the investor network, which he had lost through being in Spain and South America for about 5 or 6 years. And so he then jumped at that and met and co-founded with Stuart Hunter, who was the CTO that he needed to then launch that business.
And what's quite pertinent about this story, Maria, is that this is an incredibly compelling co-founding team. David had never founded a company, or before maybe he had on the side, but his main focus was on Cabify for a large number of years in building that unicorn, where he was tremendously successful. And we see a lot of people returning back to Australia or migrating to Australia, where they either have been founders before, or like I said, they've been on this really high growth journey within a large organization, or have cut their teeth at a place like a Google or a Facebook or an Apple, or a fast growth company elsewhere, and really, want to test their own resolve and, capability at founding a business. And we just, we don't pull people in. We merely educate them on the opportunity that Antler is and unlock the door for them. And we're attracting some incredible talent.
I can see that. So where are you located at the moment? Where are you operating Antler from at the moment?
So we're in the Sydney Startup Hub we've got about 120 desks here on level 7, which is above Wynyard Station in the Sydney CBD. We generally have strong representation of people commuting from Victoria and the other capital cities around Australia. And that diversity of people from all of those locations with the varied experience means that, again, we have a really diverse group of co-founders that build some really compelling opportunities. Over the last 15 months, we've made 37 investments. So we've raised our fund now that will allow us to make about 100 to 150 investments. And what's really exciting now is that we're also in the later stages of raising a global follow-on fund. So we're able to support these companies all the way through to a pretty mature stage of being Series C.
So just talk to me about the sort of investments that you make initially, because there are many, the VCs that we're talking to in Sydney, some amounts just aren't enough for the initial initial investment. And you're talking about quite sophisticated founders. So how does your model work?
So we give, after 12 weeks of the founders working with us, once they formed their really strong teams, got to a point of fairly strong advancement on the validation of their idea, they come and pitch at our investment committee, which actually also consists of the local VC community and partners from the VC community. If the companies get through, and the pass-through rate is generally about 50%, we give them $190,000 for 12% of their business. We realize that $190,000 is not going to last them forever, but what we found is that it's enough money that enables them to get to that next level of validation, that they're able to then go out and very quickly raise a round of typically between about $500,000 and $1.5 million. So yeah, we're quite proud of the fact that 80% of the companies that Antler has invested in raises that kind of level of funding within 6 months of us investing. And it's not to say the other 5 don't. They actually haven't. We haven't had any failures in the portfolio yet out of the 37 companies. But where we really help is that first kind of 2-3 years of launching a new business can be a really chaotic, ambiguous environment, which is very chicken and egg from a capital perspective. And what we aim to do is really remove that ambiguity and help condense that kind of 2 months of uncertainty into a 6-month period and get companies over that hill where they've got a clear capital pathway. They're able to hire, more resources and really go out and prove what they're trying to do.
And we have a number of global Australians who come home, quite a substantial number that are coming home to retire, and they're looking to make investments. Do you also receive investments from individuals, or is it mainly institutional?
No. So in our Australia fund here, our first fund, which is a $46 million fund, we have just under 200 investors in that fund. And the main reason that people invest in our fund is one, it's an extremely diverse way of getting access to some pretty incredible opportunities. And so from a risk adjusted point of view, it's quite attractive. The second reason being that a lot of these investors participate in what we do. They come and mentor and support the companies through introductions or however they best can. And it's a nice way for them to be able to interact with their investment in a way that they just don't get it with an equities portfolio or a bond portfolio or whatever else it may be, and allows them to participate in the innovation ecosystem. And then a lot of our investors as well are interested in the co-investment opportunities. So the ability to pick and choose some of those companies that they feel they can really be, materially, bring a strategic advantage to, and will likely participate in their follow-on rounds of funding. So we're very keen to hear from people that want to be part of our ecosystem, support our companies, whether it be through mentoring, whether it be for investing in some of the companies. But of course, we're also extremely excited by the amazing volume of talent that has returned to Australia. And so maybe a silver lining of COVID is that we can now work with these amazing people to create some real game-changing companies.
And when I was looking at the companies, I mean, you gave us 2 very different examples. Do you specialize in particular areas, or are you open to any opportunity? Do you run, are there any thesis-driven elements of your VC fund?
We're entirely industry agnostic, so it's entirely driven by the individuals. I run the sourcing, and we have some key areas where we think, oh, that's interesting, so maybe I'll target like energy or agriculture because we can see that as an emerging trend. But it's all driven by the individuals and their ideas and the skills that they bring to us. So industry agnostic.
But we're also able to bring the industry expertise and the validation to these individuals, not just through our team here in Australia. So we've got 24 on the ground here in Australia, and and then supported by 200 investors and another 60 advisors. We have a similar representation in the countries that we operate around the world and the cities. So Singapore, London, Oslo, Amsterdam, New York, Nairobi, Berlin, Beijing, Bangalore, Sao Paulo. Sure, I've missed something. San Francisco and LA. Which means that ultimately within our networks there is always someone that these teams are going to be able to bounce their ideas around, get that industry expertise to support and validate what they're doing. And so we get really quite excited by mobilizing or working with exceptional talent, irrespective of what it is that they want to pursue, and actually almost irrespective of where their target market is. Their target market doesn't have to be Australia from day one. We get excited by the opportunities and the people that we back.
And in terms of customers, because every startup ultimately, succeeds or fails on the basis of whether they can attract enough customers globally. How do you help them open doors to customers?
So I think, again, it comes down to the brand and the networks that we've got. The fact that, our investors and our advisors in Australia have all part of success, generally all been part of successful companies, have amazing networks. We hold a lot of events. So we actually just last week held the Australia demo day for our third cohort. 13 companies were formed out of that. Close to 2,000 people attended that event, which was live streamed. And of course, the pictures and the content that they produced lives on. But the other thing as well is that, apart from being able to leverage the Antler brand name, we're also backing incredibly talented people that are incredibly determined to be successful. And we've just seen, in addition to the support that we give these companies, their own ability to go and navigate ecosystems, get first meetings, win, large enterprise customers, even within 3 or 4 weeks of validating what it is that they're going to do, has been quite remarkable. And in those instances where maybe a larger corporate's a bit unsure or wants a bit more validation on this early business, we'll get involved in helping kind of validate who they are, their track record, their character, etc., and then enable a lot of these early partnerships to happen much sooner than they might otherwise.
It seems like just the antidote for the times, and I think that when we get this message out across the diaspora, we're adding another layer, another opportunity for high achieving global Australians to think about returning to Australia, starting their business in Australia, employing Australians, and also to remember that they can work here, but live here, but work anywhere. And I think that's what you're demonstrating.
I think one last thing that I think I might just throw in, Maria, that we're particularly proud of is actually the diversity of our cohorts, because we start at that grassroots level by saying, look, we're just interested in incredibly capable, talented, driven, motivated, resilient people that have, very interesting track records and experience. Means that we really remove a lot of the barriers that exist in the early stage ecosystem around diversity. No longer is it just rich white guys that went to had a very favorable upbringing with great networks of capital. It's everything from varied nationalities. I know across the world we've backed over 70 founders from over 70 different countries, but also women as well. And we know that they're greatly underrepresented in the startup ecosystem and in terms of VC funding. And particularly proud that in the third cohort that we've just backed of those 13 companies, 54% of the companies had a female co-founder. Across Antler globally, it's just under 40% have a female co-founder, but where those teams do have a female co-founder, 81% of the time that female co-founder is the CEO. So our view is that roughly 50% of the population are female, and it should be the case that actually we should be aspiring to having 50% of our founders being female as well, to make sure that we've got a very strong representation of society.
I just think that's an outstanding result, and in Australia, well done, Adele.
Yes, well done, Adele.
Thank you so much for your time. I've enjoyed this conversation tremendously, and I look forward to reading the comments from global Australians that hear this message. They can, of course, contact you via the Antler website. They're welcome to contact you via Advance, and we look forward to celebrating many of the fabulous startups that are growing at Antler. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. It's probably just worth saying our next cohort is starting on January the 11th. And so if people are interested about learning more, there's lots of resources, information on the website. They can obviously reach out to you, Maria, or reach out directly to us via antler.co. But we are still accepting people into the next cohort. So if those people that are returned have gone, well, the opportunity cost of me doing this is pretty low because I've just returned, I haven't lined up work, and I've fancied myself as going and founding a business. We'd love to hear from those incredibly talented people that are looking at the next thing.
And then from there, it's usually January and June start dates. If that is a bit of a push timing wise, the next cohort would start in June.
That's fantastic. So January and June, get your skates on. The next round is ready to go. Thank you so much to both of you. Have a lovely time. Bye-bye.
Thanks.